And so the first game in teaching mindfulness is to teach people how to be aware without judging and fixing and resisting and grasping, and not make it a self-improvement project, but rather the ability just to become the loving witness of this human life, which changes everything. Because usually we're trying to fix it. As the author Florida Scott Maxwell writes, no matter how old a mother is, she looks to her middle-aged children for signs of improvement, right? And we've internalized that. Okay, now I'm going to meditate and I'm going to get better, whatever your idea of better is. And the game with mindfulness and the kind of fundamental or loving awareness training is to be spacious and gracious with what's actually true in your human life. And people don't tell us to do this very much. It's always like you got to fix yourself and get more and do more and have more, and that's our culture. So this is more like being. And we use images of sitting like a mountain with all the weather changes, or resting like a butterfly on a flower, not changing the flower, but there, and beginning to sense the breath, your life breath, as it comes in and out as a way to connect the body and mind. And in doing so, the breath becomes a kind of a mirror. Mullah Nasruddin, the Sufi holy man and sage from the Middle East, went into the bank to cash a check one day, and they said, "Could you please identify yourself?" So he reached in his pocket, pulled out a small mirror, and said, "Yeah, that's me, all right." And what mindfulness begins to do as we start to train our attention to be quite present, and begin often with this very universal and simple practice of being aware that your body is breathing, is that the breath then becomes a kind of a mirror, which, as you feel the breath, you notice the longing or the anxiety or the peacefulness or the frustration, or all the different states of the heart and mind. You notice the tension in the body. You begin to notice what's actually going on in a way that we often don't pay attention to. And without being aware, it's not possible to really live in a free way. We're otherwise just in kind of reaction to what's coming. And sometimes in working with the breath, there will be some phrases or words that are invited. You can say to yourself softly, calm or centered or ease with each breath, a kind of invitation to quiet the mind somewhat. And as you sit, even in the beginning, you'll feel the body pains and tensions. They show themselves. And we carry those in our physical body, trauma and so forth, it's all here. Or you'll notice the moods you have. You start to sense the unfinished business of the heart. If there's grieving, that there's been a loss and you've been so busy running around, you sit and maybe then the tears will come because you're finally paying attention, or longing, or all kinds of other experiences. And my friend Malidoma Somé, who's a West African shaman and medicine man, when he first came here from Burkina, the Dagara people, he had gone through this great shaman's training, although he has a couple of PhDs, one from the Sorbonne and one in the US, but he's mostly a shaman. And he said, "But I came out of the shaman's training, and I walked through your streets, and your streets are full of the ungrieved dead." And what he meant, he said, I could somehow see the spirits, homeless people who died in ICUs, taken care of, in caring ways by the nurses and the staff, but whose family wasn't there, people who died in old age homes, and so forth. And he said, in our culture, we grieve and honor each person. And that's a deliberate part of our Dagara people's way of moving through the world, that we celebrate each birth and we also celebrate the life at the end of it. And your culture has lost its attention to grief, and because of it, it still carries the grief in an unhealthy way. And so when you sit and you're quiet, the unfinished business of the heart starts to arise. And then you see the mind, a cartoon in the New Yorker, which shows a car crossing the Utah desert with a sign, roadside sign that reads, "Your own tedious thoughts, next 200 miles," right? And that's kind of meditation, the way it is, because you start to see your racing mind and all that it does. And what you do in establishing loving awareness is to notice what's present without reacting to it. And you notice there's, a racing mind, or there's tears, or there's longing, or whatever experiences you have, or tension. And almost as if to bow to it, you just acknowledge that this is the way that it is. It's like this right now. And you start to feel the experiences rise and fall, like the breath rises and falls, comes and goes, and you let these experiences rise and fall like waves of the ocean around the breath. And the research of people like Richie Davidson shows an increased capacity to approach challenges when you train mindfulness, because these difficulties come, and what it is, the neuroscience language is, you expand the window of tolerance. Dan Siegel also uses that language, so that you're able to bear the tears, or for some people it's joy. Some people are so loyal to their suffering that it's scary to let themselves feel happy or well. And so by expanding the window of tolerance, you learn how to be present for life without so much judgment and contraction and fear and aversion. This is what makes up our human life. And that already starts to invite a kind of well-being and freedom.